The sun hung low over the dry horizon, painting the desert sky with streaks of red and gold as the wind stirred dust across the barren earth. She walked alone, her steps slow, heavy, carrying not just the weight of her swollen belly but the burden of rejection. The small settlement she had once called home had turned its back on her, whispering behind her back, accusing her of dishonor, treating her like an outcast. Pregnant, unmarried, and alone, she had been forced to leave, cast out to wander the wild places with no one but her unborn child for company. Fear clawed at her heart with every mile she walked, for she had no food left, little water, and no shelter waiting ahead. Each night she prayed to survive one more day, though she no longer knew what she was surviving for. It was in this emptiness that she first saw him. He appeared from the trees like a figure carved out of the wilderness itself, tall, strong, his skin bronzed by the sun, his hair long and black, falling past his shoulders. He was Apache, and the way he moved carried both grace and quiet power, like a wolf watching from the edge of the woods. She froze when she saw him, clutching her belly instinctively, unsure if he meant harm. His eyes studied her, dark and steady, but not cruel. In silence, he approached, his footsteps soft upon the dry earth. "You walk alone," he said at last, his voice deep and measured, carrying the calm authority of someone who belonged to the land. She nodded, though her lips trembled. "I have nowhere else to go," she whispered. They did not want me." The Apache man tilted his head, his gaze flicking to her belly. He said nothing for a long while, but she could feel him weighing her worth, testing her spirit. Finally, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Please come with me. Your children need a father." The word struck her heart like an arrow, both shocking and strangely comforting. Children. Not just one, but children, as if he saw more than she could yet. She stammered, unable to answer right away. Why would he care? Why would a stranger offer her such a promise? And yet, when she looked into his eyes, she saw no deceit, only a fierce sincerity. He held out his hand, roughened by work and war, and after a long, trembling hesitation, she placed her own hand into it. He led her away from the path she had been following, guiding her into the wilderness he seemed to know as well as his own skin. They walked for hours until they reached a hidden place in the forest, where a small stream flowed clear and cold, where wild berries grew, and where the trees sheltered them like guardians. There, he had built a simple lodge of wood and hides, a place meant for survival but strong enough to endure the seasons. "Here you will not be cast out," he said as she entered, her eyes widening at the safety it offered. "Here you will belong." Days passed into weeks. At first, she remained cautious, keeping distance between herself and this quiet man who had claimed responsibility for her fate. Yet he showed her nothing but kindness. He brought her food, fresh fish from the stream, meat from his hunts, herbs he gathered with skillful hands. He made her rest when her body ached and spoke gently when fear clouded her eyes. His presence was like the earth itself, solid, unyielding, offering her strength she had not thought she deserved. Slowly, her heart began to ease. At night, when the fire burned low, he told her stories of his people, of spirits who walked in the mountains, of the great eagle who carried prayers to the Creator, of warriors who had fought and died for their families. She listened, her hand resting over her belly, feeling the small life within her stir as if in response to his voice. She wondered if this was what it meant to be safe, to be cared for without judgment. When the time came, it was he who stood beside her. The pains of labor tore through her body, and she thought she would die, but his hands were there, steady, holding her, guiding her, whispering words of strength in his native tongue. Through the agony, she clung to his voice, until at last the cries of a newborn filled the lodge. She wept, holding her child close, while he watched with eyes both fierce and tender. In that moment, she knew he had spoken truth. Her child had a father now, not by blood, but by choice. Life did not grow easier overnight. There were storms, hunger, dangers from wild animals and men alike. Yet together they endured. The Apache man taught her how to gather roots, how to set snares, how to move silently through the woods. He taught her that survival was not just a fight but a way of honoring life. And in return, she gave him a home that was no longer empty, laughter that had been missing from his solitary existence, and the warmth of a family he had never thought to have. In time, love grew between them, not the sudden fire of passion but the slow, steady flame that burned stronger with each day. He touched her with reverence, as though she were a blessing sent by the spirits, and she loved him not just for his strength but for the way he had seen her worth when no one else did. They had more children, as he had somehow foretold, and their small family became a beacon of hope in a world that often sought to crush the vulnerable. Sometimes she would remember the settlement that had cast her out, the faces of those who had judged her. But instead of bitterness, she felt only gratitude, for had they not abandoned her, she would never have found the man who became her protector, her partner, the father of her children. In the wilderness, where she had once feared she would perish, she had instead discovered a life richer and more full than she had ever dreamed. And so, whenever the wind whispered through the trees and the stars shone brightly overhead, she would hold her children close and look at the man beside her, the Apache who had once spoken those words that changed everything. "Please come with me. Your children need a father." And in her heart, she knew that she had not only found salvation but the truest kind of love.